Well, thanks for joining us for our Live at Lunch. We have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about how can the next generation win with you. And my guest is really special because she works here, but she also has a really incredible story on how she ended up here at One Church TO. So Steph Jones, so glad that you're joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Now, you're our Next Gen team lead. That means you oversee all of Next Gen, birth all the way up to young adults. You and your team are in charge of all of those moments. So I brought you today because I want to talk to you because somebody invested in your life that landed you in this seat, right? In the role that you're in right now. But before we get to that, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Because we're going to be talking about high school Steph.
Oh gosh, okay.
I wonder, what if high school Steph could go out for lunch at any restaurant, what would high school Steph eat for lunch?
Oh man, I wish I could say I was like a little more adventurous, but I really wasn't.
No.
And I was a solid chicken fingers and fries kind of gal.
Chicken fingers and fries.
Yeah.
That's it?
That's
wouldn't,
it.
Yeah, okay.
With like a Sprite.
Okay, wow. Now, have you elevated a little bit? Like if I was going to take you out for lunch, what would you order?
I really like if you go to like a classic restaurant, I like their bowls like with the rice base.
Yes.
And I like trying those out. So
I feel like you get so much more out of a bowl than you do just a simple meal.
And it's like healthy-ish.
Okay, yeah.
Healthier.
Okay.
It's healthier than chicken fingers and fries.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I asked you to join us because somebody chose to invest in your life when you were in high school.
Yeah.
Now, did you grow up going to church?
No, I actually, I am at this point still the only Christian in my family.
For now.
Yeah. So did not grow up. I grew up with, I would say maybe like spiritual atheist, I guess.
Okay,
like my mom's like spiritual, but didn't necessarily believe in a higher power or God. So that's kind of how I grew up.
Okay, awesome. And so you were in high school when someone from this church who had grown up in this church actually invited you to come out to check out One Church TO. And that was Arlene Charters. Tell me, how did you meet Arlene?
So Arlene Charters was a teacher at my high school.
Okay.
And I know her as Miss Charters. It's so weird like using her first name, but I'm used to it now. And she taught music. She taught specifically vocals. And I went to an art school, so I was, vocals was like my main study. My main thing at this art school. And so she was like one of my main teachers. Funny enough, didn't really love her at first.
No?
I was just like, nah. But I actually, my first like recital or like at the end of the semester you had to perform. And you had to do these like theater, like this performance of all the music that you learned basically. And I had twisted my ankle and I was on crutches and
Classic stuff.
Yeah, very classic, like very much me. And I had told her I couldn't go because I was on crutches. Now I definitely could have gone and sang, like there was nothing wrong with my throw, but I just didn't go. So didn't start off at the great note, but I'm so thankful that she stuck around.
Okay. Well, I have some pictures we dug up.
Okay.
Can you tell me a little bit about these? So this is you and Arlene. How old would you have been here?
15. Probably 15 here, yeah.
Okay. How long have you known Arlene at this point? Or Miss Charters? How long have you known her?
This would probably been 2 years. This is just before the end of grade 10.
Okay.
So yeah, you could tell we're great now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So that was grade 10.
Next picture. Let's see. Okay.
This is older. This is when I was probably a young adult.
You look really close here.
Yes, this is us like in our full-blown mentorship. Like she had just poured so much into my life. We're actually at her home. I had graduated high school here, so this is me just coming over and hanging out.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. And one more picture.
Okay.
Tell me about this.
This is at the church, and this is like our stage at the church, and this is right after New Year's Eve.
Okay. I hear New Year's Eve is crazy around here.
You can't miss it.
Okay.
Like it is the gathering to come to. Arlene and I take a picture every year on New Year's.
You do?
Every single year. Yeah,
okay.
Without fail. This was the last New Year's before COVID. So this was 2020. This is going into 2020.
2019.
I guess,
into 2020. I got it. Okay.
January 2020. Okay. So this is the last one that we took together. But so we take one every single year.
Okay, so this is more recent. Let's go back to the first one. Tell me a little bit about the moment that Arlene stepped into your life and really introduced you to who Jesus was?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't this, because this is still grade 10 stuff.
Okay.
But in grade 12, I was still heavily involved in music. And at this point, like I had grown a great relationship with Arlene. And it was known in our school that Arlene was a Christian.
Everyone knew?
Everyone knew.
Okay.
Everyone just knew she was a Christian. She was really unapologetic about it. Not in a forceful way, but like it was evident. Like she talked about how much she loved her church. She talked about her friends at church and all the things that she was doing. And so it was really evident that like she had a solid faith and a solid community of people that she really loved. And so fast forward 2 years, I was in grade 12 and I was just having a really rough time at home. Okay. My mom was in a really, really abusive relationship. And eventually that relationship kind of just hit a spearhead where the man that my mom was involved with actually put out death threats for my whole family, and my brother and my mom and myself, and then kind of took off. And that resulted in us having to be in protective custody, like witness protection kind of thing. And so we were at a space where we couldn't disclose where we were to anyone, like our family, friends, no one could know. And we had to stay there. And we also had to have escorts to school, because this person knew where my brother and I went to school, and so we had to have this escort. It was a lot.
Must have been terrifying.
It was kind of scary. It was scary. But also you're a teenager and you're like, this is so much. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, at the same time,
everyone wants to protect me.
Yeah, you're a little embarrassed too, right? And so one of the things that was really, really important for the police was our protection at school, because they weren't going to be able to be there at school. So they actually came into my school and they had a meeting with every single one of my teachers and the principals.
That's not embarrassing.
Not at all.
Okay.
And they said basically, in order to protect Stephanie, we want her to have an escort to every one of her classes. Anytime she's in the hallway, basically someone needs to be with her. I was like, oh my goodness. So that was really embarrassing. Arlene stepped up and said that she would do that.
Wow.
And so she made sure to escort me to all of my classes for that time. And so she would meet me at the front door at the beginning of the day, and she would take me to all of my classes. And home was still really rough. It was still really rocky. Mm-hmm. At that point, I actually moved to my grandma's, who was in Toronto. And this was around, that all happened in the winter, and then spring came, and Arlene was talking to me about Easter at her church and how excited she was, and there was like this whole production, and the music was gonna be great.
Okay.
And she's like, you should come. And I was like, oh, that's sweet. I'm like, church is not my thing. I was like, no. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to be singing this Easter. Like, why don't you just come to hear me sing? Like, you've never really heard me sing. So just to be polite, I was like, okay, I'll come. And I came to this church. This was her church. One Tricia is her church. She grew up here since she was 8.
Wow.
And so this was her home church, I think 8, I might be wrong, but this was her home church. I came to this building.
Wow.
And that's how it kind of started.
You know what, I love that you said she just stepped into my life. She didn't have to say she would walk you to and from classes.
Yeah.
That was probably inconvenient for her, but she was willing to invest in your life in that moment, which gave her an opportunity then to invite you to church, right?
Yeah, and like I spent in that season, I spent a lot of time at school because I wasn't allowed out, right? So I was either like in this.
So lunches at school.
Yeah, like everything had to be supervised, right? So I wasn't allowed to go to the mall after school, or I wasn't allowed to take the bus and go to my friend's house. I wasn't even allowed at my friend's house. I was either at school or at the place that we were staying. And so I spent as much time as possible at school because I'm very social.
Really?
I like to be with people. And so I spent a lot of time at school, and Arlene just, she spent a lot of time with me there, and just had conversations and started talking to me about who Jesus was, and mentoring me in that way.
So tell me, how did you get from that moment where you show up at this church to hear Ms. Charters sing on the stage to now you sit in the role of Next Gen team lead,
Yeah, it's wild.
leading our entire church and next generation to know Jesus? Tell me, how did you get there?
It's crazy. And if Arlene was here, I know that she would tell you, because she always says this, like, would you have ever imagined your life to be like this? Because she knew me, and she knew how much I was like so turned off from church. I didn't want to just be there. And it's just amazing to see how God moved. So basically, I did come on that Easter to hear her sing. And I walked into this space, and there was something different about these people. The way that I was greeted, the way that I just sat with Arlene and her family, and like her surrounding family, which was the church family, and how I was welcomed. There was something so different about the people that sat in this space that I wanted in my own life, that I was lacking in my own life, that I really, really wanted. And so I think that was like one of my first pulls, and wanting to kind of figure what this was. And Arlene kept encouraging me to pray. She's like, just pray, like just try it. And I was like, what the heck does that even mean?
How do I pray? How
do I pray? I had never opened a Bible. Actually, I did, as punishment. My dad, if I was misbehaving, my dad would open up the King James Version and make me read it.
Wow.
As a punishment. Just like up and around, like read the Bible. And so I think he was trying to give me the word while disciplining me. So that was like one of my punishments, but I had never read it besides that. I'd never prayed. And I remember I was just having a really, really hard night. Like it was really hard. And I remember that was like the first time that I like had prayed. And I just was talking out loud, and I was like, like I just really had no idea what I was doing. But I remember saying this, I said, God, if you are real, if this is real, then you need to show me something right now. I know we always discourage people from doing that, but that was that. We were like, don't do that. Don't give God an ultimatum. But that was where I was, and that's where I really truly felt like that was it for me. It was going to be that moment or nothing. And I said, because if you don't show up, like this is it for me, and I won't turn to you again. And in that moment, I just felt like a stillness come over me,
the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, it was the Holy Spirit. I experienced the Spirit in that moment, and I think God really knew that I needed to experience it that way, because I was so rooted in who I was in my own life, and like that I needed an experience that I could never refute. I needed something that like I knew down in my core that was real, that no one could take away from me. Yeah. And that was it. And then the next week I came back to this church.
Wow.
Sat in the auditorium. Pastor Keith was teaching, and he said, if anybody's ready to give their heart to the Lord, put your hand up.
Wow.
I put my hand up and I prayed with Pastor Keith. And then I started volunteering, first with music and then with kids. And then I came on part-time 7 hours, then 15, then 23, and now full-time in my role. Yeah.
And so now you lead all the next gen here at the church, helping them to know who Jesus is, because somebody introduced you to Jesus a very long time ago. I wonder.
Not a very long time ago.
You're a little bit older.
You're saying a very long time.
Well, okay, a while ago.
Thank you.
A while ago.
Thank you, Jessica.
So help us understand, as older people, help us understand, I guess, how easy is it for our students to share their faith in a school setting? Do our students maybe experience some pushback from their friends and their peers?
I think that we are in a time in culture where it is countercultural to be a Christian.
Okay.
Not to be religious. You can have a different religion. You can be Muslim. You can be Buddhist. But you can't be Christian. You can't believe in Jesus. And it's really, really challenging. And I know for a fact, I mean, kids as young as grade 3 talk about how hard it is for them to be Christians at school, and how hard it is for them to talk about who they believe in and Jesus' love. Because it's just countercultural to be a Christ follower right now.
Yeah, probably hard for them to articulate their faith even.
To
their peers and friends.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that they feel that's hard for them to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, how do you think we can be praying for our kids and our students? How can we come alongside of them as they are going to school? What, as we as parents and people in the church, how can we encourage them?
I think I'm such a strong advocate of seeing kids as not just as children, but as people that make up our society. Yeah. Because we do a disservice sometimes to our kids in thinking that we have to dumb things down for them. And so when we have kids at church, or when we're introducing them to concepts such as faith and religion and things, we want them to understand the key points, and we want them to understand that Jesus loves them. That's really hard for an 8-year-old to articulate to their friend, and maybe that friend, their parents are going through a divorce. How do we teach our 8-year-olds to teach their friends that Jesus loves them and articulate what that looks like in their own lives? And I think that's one of the things that we can do as a church, and that will really help this next generation, is have critical conversations about faith with them. Not shallow conversations, but conversations that go deep. And allow them to articulate who Jesus is in their lives, and challenge them to do that, because it is hard, even as adults, when you face pushback of your faith, it's sometimes really hard to just to talk about it. But the sooner that we can encourage and empower our kids to be able to have conversations about who Jesus is to them, the better equipped they are for the world, and to have those conversations with friends and peers.
So providing them a space to really ask those big questions and let them wrestle it out a little bit.
Absolutely.
Help them to discover faith on their own, so it actually becomes something that is meaningful to them and guides them.
Because I think I've seen a lot of this. I see sometimes parents or guardians and caregivers afraid of that wrestling, afraid of their children having to wrestle with their faith. But that wrestling is what forces us to come closer to Jesus. That is where we find who Jesus is, in those moments where we're wrestling with him. And so allowing our kids to have the space to do that, and having people in their lives that are going to give them the right direction.
Our faith solidifies when we can talk about it, right?
100%.
When we can articulate it.
Yeah.
You know what? Thank goodness for Arlene and her willingness just to be obedient and step into your life and invest into your life. As a result, your future and the future of our church was changed just by that simple moment where she decided to step forward and be a mentor in your life. I wonder if someone's joining us today and they're wondering, you know what, I think I have something to offer to the next gen. How would they go about starting that?
We are right now, we're in a period of time, especially with our youth students, that we're really looking for mentors. We're really looking for people to lean in. And not only, there's a difference between like a weekend volunteer and a mentor. A mentor is pouring into, a mentor is doing life alongside of, and we are really looking for that for our youth students, specifically our senior highs, which are our high school students, grade 9 to 12. We're noticing a gap there, and we want them to have more voices speak into their lives. So that's one of the best ways to be doing that here. Yeah.
That's what Arlene did, right? She could have just walked you to your class and back, but instead she opened her whole life to you, her family, her church family, allowed you space in her life and invested in.
Absolutely.
Look where we are today.
And you know what? It started with her just being willing to walk me to a class.
Okay.
You know, it started there.
Yeah.
It started with her just being like, okay, I'll take that step. I see this student who's struggling. I'll walk her to her classes, and I see her after school. I'll sit in the hall with her while she's sitting there, and it started like that.
Starts with just, I'm available.
Yeah.
How does somebody tell your team that they are available to mentor our next generation of kids?
The best way is to go onechurch.to and fill out the serving platform there. Perfect. And our team gets that right away, and so we can connect with anybody who's interested.
Fantastic.
Right away.
Well, if you're watching this and over this past week you really felt like I have something that God maybe wants me to contribute into the next gen, please reach out, head to our website, fill out that serve form. We would love to connect with you and just chat a little bit more about what it would look like to step up as a mentor in someone's life. Now, I want to thank you for joining us. This is our last Live at Lunch for the season. We're going to do these in the future because they have been really, really great, and we've loved spending time with you during the week. We are in our final week of our series, You versus the Universe, ending this weekend. And then the first week of August, we're starting a really great series. It's called Moving Forward, and Pastor Jonathan and Dr. Van are going to be leading us through that. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a really great week, and we'll see you on the weekend.